Violence continues to escalate in what the United Nations calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The civil war in Sudan has been raging for 2.5 years. But over the past 2 weeks, there has been a major turning point after the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group captured North Darfur's capital of Al Fasher.
The largest city of Darfur is being besieged. And when I say besiege, I actually mean physically besieged, with the berm surrounding the city, with starvation being used as a weapon of war, with every single request to send humanitarian assistance into the city of Al Fasher being rejected.
These are some of the latest images coming into the newsroom of civilians who have fled the violence hundreds of kilometers away. Meanwhile, all communications are cut off in Al Fasher. The city has faced an 18-month siege by the RSF, leading to famine and accusations of ethnic cleansing and genocide. The group agreed to a ceasefire that was brokered by the United States and regional partners. However, the Sudanese army, known as the SAF, has yet to do the same. Now, since the war began in April of 2023, the toll on the Sudanese population has been staggering. Again, according to both the United Nations and other NGOs working on the ground, more than 150,000 people have died and 12 million have fled their homes. They're either displaced internally or fleeing to neighboring countries. And according to the International Rescue Committee, more than 30 million people, that's nearly half of Sudan's entire population, are in need of humanitarian aid. Nicholas Coghlan has been watching these events unfold closely. He served as Canada's first resident diplomat in Khartoum, Sudan from 2000 to 2003, and today he joins us from Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. Mr. Coghlan, thank you so much for making time for us, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for your interest.
Absolutely. This is a subject many of us on the Weekend Team care deeply about. I wonder, sir, if we can begin with your best assessment of what, in fact, is happening with the ceasefire agreement. The RSF, and I just want to clarify for folks at home, if you get confused, RSF is the paramilitary group and the SAF is the Sudanese army. So the RSF has agreed that, in principle, to the ceasefire proposal, but we are hearing reports that the fighting is not stopping. What's your best assessment of what's actually happening on the ground?
Unfortunately, I don't think the outlook for the ceasefire is encouraging at all. First of all, it's worth noting the RSF only agreed to it after it had taken El Fasher, which, as you say, is probably the key military development in the war over the past year. Secondly, there's a real sense they agreed to it knowing that the SAF, the Sudan Armed Forces, would reject it. And indeed, all of the signs coming from the SAF are that they will only accept a ceasefire if the RSF surrenders all its weapons and retreats from urban centres. And I think both sides know that is not going to happen. So tragically, the outlook for a ceasefire is not promising at all.
Are you still in touch with people on the ground in Sudan? And if so, can you describe what they're telling you about what's happening there?
I think there's no doubt that a genocide is occurring. In fact, this is a reprise of the genocide of 20 years ago, but it has acquired great intensity in the last 2 weeks. There's a lot of new evidence out there, the kind of evidence that was not available 20 years ago, even photographs from space that actually show bloodstains on the ground. They are showing corpses, and in the last day or so, they are showing dead bodies, corpses being incinerated and buried. And if that weren't enough, you have the RSF itself, for reasons best known to themselves, glorifying in what they are doing. They are on TikTok, actually using the term, the Arabic term for Holocaust, which is also the same term as for genocide, and apparently reveling in it. So there is no doubt we have a genocide underway. What we don't yet know is how many people are being killed. The city is cut off, just a trickle coming out, which in itself is ominous. So a very, very grim situation.
Mr. Coghlan, thank you for bringing up the ethnic element of this story, because as we've been reporting so often, this is a forgotten war. This story does not get the coverage it deserves. And part of the issue around the genocide for people watching would be, what is the genocide? The RSF being a predominantly Arab-based group, their predecessors were the Janjaweed, and what you've got is an elimination or hunting down of African Sudanese or non-Arab Sudanese groups. So to that point, sir, let me ask you, why do you think this war is often forgotten about? Why, considering the degree of atrocities, the suffering and the hunger, Why is this story not talked about?
I would say, if I may correct you, I would say it's not forgotten, it's been relegated. I do think there is significant coverage, including by the Globe and Mail, by the CBC, a number of other media outlets. I don't think there's any lack of coverage. It has been relegated. And it has been relegated for one principal reason, and that is that the enabler of the genocide, the party that is arming the UAE, the party that is arming the RSF is the United Arab Emirates, generally considered a Western ally. That is an extremely inconvenient fact for Western countries, including Canada. And I think this is the principal reason why the genocide is being relegated, is being put to one side. Western countries do not wish to face up to that very ugly fact.
Let's talk about that inconvenient fact of the UAE's involvement. Now, our team, investigative teams, have found evidence that, in fact, Canadian weapons are being used by members of the RSF. There's photographs of the various types of weaponry that has been produced in Canada being used by this paramilitary group. Now, to bridge that gap, Canada has an embargo on selling weapons to Sudan since 2004, but we do not have an embargo on selling weapons to the UAE. Can you talk to me about that flow and how exactly that works?
Yes, and congratulations on that investigation. Very, very important. I think there are two dimensions of the direct Canadian involvement. First of all, there is a Canadian-owned company that is based in the UAE. It's called Street. They make armored vehicles. For many years, they have been selling armored vehicles into the Sahel from their plants in the UAE. Now, until about 5 years ago, the Canadian government had no effective reach because the factory is located in the UAE. Since Canada signed the Arms Trade Treaty, we actually have an obligation to investigate and prosecute any Canadian suspected of breaching the arms embargo. And in this case, I emphatically believe that the owner of Street should be investigated on that basis as a broker. Second dimension, the revelation which you broke yesterday concerning rifles made by a BC company that have ended up in the hands of the RSF. I don't think anybody seriously suggests they have sold them directly to the RSF. They've almost certainly gone from the UAE to the RSF. This points up failures in our export control system, failures in our ability to control what is called the end user. And I think that both of these dimensions of Canadian involvement need urgent attention.
There is a possibility also under the International Arms Trade Treaty that Canada is a signatory to that there could be criminal charges. I mean, you mentioned the investigation. There could, in fact, be criminal charges brought against these companies. How would you know the procedure? How exactly would that move forward? Does that fall on the federal government to initiate an investigation?
Well, it's you're right. The Arms Trade Treaty requires that we monitor and, if necessary, prosecute any Canadian nationals. The term is brokers, people responsible for broking arms sales. My sense, and the sense of many observers, is that the owner of Street, who is a Canadian citizen, is a broker in this sense. These armored vehicles have been sighted as recently as last week in the hands of the RSF in Darfur. It's a violation of the Canadian embargo and of the UN embargo. So that would fall to the RCMP to investigate. To my awareness, they have never launched such an investigation, but it is a clear obligation under the Arms Trade Treaty and take action. If I may also mention, and Prime Minister Carney will be in the UAE next week.
Yes.
I and many other observers very much hope, we understand, of course, I understand the need to diversify Canada's trade relationships at this time. I think we all get that. Nevertheless, if he fails to address directly with Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the UAE, the matter of the UAE's enabling of genocide in Sudan, I think that would be, how can I say, I'll be extremely disappointed. So will very many other people. I think he has, to be honest, a responsibility to do so. The UAE, not to put too fine a point on it, is enabling a genocide. If, as we know, one of the connections between Canada and the UAE is going to be in the field of AI. Well, ironically, if you were to go into AI now and ask does the UAE enable genocide in Darfur? You'll get a simple answer, and it is yes.
Mr. Coghlan, I hear you that our Prime Minister may have a responsibility to bring this up with his counterparts in the UAE. Do you have confidence that he will?
So far, to be honest, I'm not encouraged, but we can but hope. Just the day before yesterday, Foreign Minister Anita Anand tweeted that she had been in contact with her counterpart in the UAE in preparation for this visit. She said only that they had discussed regional peace and security issues. I don't think that's specific enough. I think to be frank, the Prime Minister needs to address this bluntly, and if I may, he needs to come out and say he has addressed it. This is what we collectively owe to the victims of this genocide.
Mr. Coghlan, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, sir, a real education, and I hope that you and I can continue this conversation again.
Thanks so much for your continued interest.
Absolutely. Take care, sir.
Bye-bye.